and I'll get that circulated out later this evening as well, so you've got that sort of straight away to review before any games tomorrow. I know Tim's got a game tomorrow. If anyone else gets any games sort of early next week, if you do drop out, just join using the link on the email again to pop back into the meeting. And anything that you've missed, you can catch up on within the circulated video afterwards. We are going to cover sort of 5 different areas as we go through the meeting tonight. I scheduled an hour for it. I think potentially it could take 40 to 45 minutes. I don't think we'll hit that full hour. So depending on questions at the end, obviously, we should be done in about 45 minutes. But we're just going to go through some sort of COVID-19 guidance for observers briefly, just to give you an outline of sort of how we expect you guys to work with match officials and on the day with this. Slight changes to the appointment process this season, which I'll touch upon as well. I'll give us a brief overview of the promotion applicants that we have as well this season. Touch upon who are our observers this year and how many we've got numbers wise, and how many games we need to get covered by the end of the season. And then we'll just go through the forms very quickly again, just to pick out some positive points from last season's forms and give you an idea of what we're looking for ahead of the new season, so that we're all working off of a similar pattern, and referees can get a similar style of observation come through with key details included within that. We're going to start with guidance to try and keep that fresh in our minds ahead of weekend games and going forwards. For those of you that operate on Supplier League and above as well, we're trying to keep it as similar as possible to that. There's some slight adjustments in timings, but we felt that the guidance the FA produced was very good and very accurate, and we didn't want to give too many different directives to you for those that are working across multiple levels of the game. So in terms of our pre-match directives and pre-match instructions, the referees should contact you. They're going to be advised to contact you prior to the game to help set up and arrange that debriefing situation, so or that post-match situation. Ideally, we want this confirming by either telephone conversation post-match with that debrief, or via video conferencing. We don't want you communicating with them on a match day. We're limited on what we can do in terms of face-to-face, and we want to try and limit as much face-to-face action as possible. So the only real action pre-match regarding to the guidance is making sure that we're setting up an appropriate date and time to arrange that pre-match conversation, whether we choose to do it over the phone or on a meeting like this. Ideally, we want this completed sort of within 24 hours of the game. Push come to shove, 48 hours of the game. That way, then it remains fresh in everyone's minds about what happened with the game and any contents that may need to be discussed. If you wish to do it via video conferencing and you're not too sure on how to get it set up, then let me know. I'm happy to set up those meetings for you on a week-by-week basis with the referee and get those invites there. So all you'll need to do is click the join button like you've done today, and you'll both pop in there when you're both ready to get that done. Happy to get that set up for you if that makes life a bit easier as well. So you're all using a similar system, but I'll let you liaise with the referee on match days to how you want that doing. In terms of during the match, clubs should be providing briefings before the game to the match officials. So please follow those guidelines as well. Please, when you arrive, the club should be giving you, for those that are probably going to go out on more grassroots facilities and those the park pitches, there's going to be limited differences compared to usual. It's going to be keeping that social distancing and working around that as best you can. For those that might be going to sort of Kershaw grounds and that played on Supplier League or above grounds such as your Ealeys and your Ainsbury Rovers or Ainsbury United, then there might be additional guidance there you might need to follow, such as one-way systems and stuff like that. So keep that in mind, but also follow that referee guidance that was circulated during the pre-season and will be circulated again later tonight in the referee's newsletter that you'll get. So have a read of those. Make sure you're aware of the guidelines that need to be followed by a match official, and try and follow those as best you can as well with that guidance. The idea behind this one of keeping that face-to-face contact as limited as possible limits that additional face of that the referee the team need to meet, and limits the contacts that you can have with those, and potentially limits the cross infection that might take place should an individual be a carrier but not aware. It does limit that as much as possible, so try and keep that limited. By doing so, we're sort of asking referees to arrive no earlier than 15 minutes prior to kick-off. What I will say with that is probably aim for half an hour, but stay within the car for 15 minutes to keep yourself there. That then allows for any travel delays or anything like that. The last thing you want to be doing is aiming for that 15 minutes bang on, being stuck in traffic for 10 minutes and you're rushing a little bit. Okay, so 15 minutes inside the ground, possibly try and get to the grounds or the facility slightly earlier, and just keep safe in your car until that timing's there to give you that slight barrier as well. Face coverings are to be worn at all times as well during the game. Again, just for your own protection, really, we're thinking, but also for the protection of those around you as well. With you arriving 15 minutes prior to kickoff as well, and that limiting of face-to-face contact, we're basically asking you not to speak to the referee on match day in face-to-face, which might be a little bit strange and might make you sort of think why. Again, the idea behind that is that we're limiting that face-to-face contact and limiting the amount of cross people that we're communicating with and liaising with. The debriefs are taking place offline or away from the ground, so we don't need to be there before the game and communicating with them and after the game as well. So limit that as much as you can and try and avoid talking to them during the match or after the match and before the match. With that, at the end of the game, try and just leave the facility as soon as you can when safe to do so. Some grounds will be a lot easier. If you're on your local recreation ground, it's a lot easier to leave, whereas if you're at one of those Kershaw Premier grounds where they're playing at a step 6 or above facility, you've got that one-way system potentially you may need to follow through the turnstile. So don't be afraid to hold back in those situations in your position and let other people leave first, and then leave safely yourself. Again, we're just trying to limit the amount of people that you come into contact with to keep everyone as safe as possible. So moving on to then the post-match, drop a text to the referee just so that they know that you've been to the ground. At that stage, try and confirm any misconduct that may have taken place so that when you're preparing for your debrief over the phone or via video conferencing, you've got the key facts and figures ready to go and you can prepare what you need to discuss in advance, and that's less sort of time on those chats that you've got to sort of think about the misconduct. If you've got any queries with that, obviously then you can raise that in the video chat or the telephone conversation regarding sort of cautions if you've got something different down. Just try and gather what they've got down after the game, and you can help prepare as best as possible. We were sort of asking you to send that text message because you're not communicating with them. They can then go, right, okay, the observer was there, we can now go ahead and start planning for that meeting and preparing for that from their aspect. If for whatever reason you couldn't make it, stuck in traffic or you felt you had symptoms, then at least they're aware as well that you weren't in attendance and that there won't be that debrief that they need to complete. As I've sort of touched upon already, that debrief is completed within 48 hours. But 24-hour time slots. If you're observing on the Saturday, try and complete it on the Sunday where possible. Understandably, you're going to have family commitments and the referee might have commitments. They might be doing other games. You might be doing other games on a Sunday. Completely get that, in which case try and find an appropriate time around that as best you can. On the games I've done so far, I've been observed twice on 2 games already this season, and both occasions I found the best time to be is on the drive back home on the phone. If you've got Bluetooth and the referee's got Bluetooth, obviously you can't look at your notes if you're driving, but don't be afraid to try and use that method by doing so. But hopefully if you're getting out of the facility as quick as you can, you might be home by the time the referee leaves the ground if they've got stuff that they need to sort out on their side. So that might be a good opportunity to propose with referees as well and try and work around that as best you can. In terms of with this guidance, if on the match day as well, obviously please do check yourself for COVID symptoms. If you feel you are coming down with COVID symptoms, please do let myself know, let Chris know, and let the referee know, so that we are aware that you won't be attending. The slightest of things, if you feel you've got one of those symptoms, whether it's the high temperature, the new or continuous cough, or the sudden loss of taste or smell, then don't be afraid to come off the game last minute. We're not going to penalise anyone for that. The safety of everyone is absolutely paramount. So we would rather people come off 10 minutes before the game or 10 minutes before they need to leave because they've suddenly over the morning developed these symptoms than attend the game, not feel great, and suddenly we've got a slightly bigger problem on our hands after that. So don't be afraid if you are in a position where you don't feel comfortable going to the game. Please do let us know. At the same time, please only come back to observing and officiating when you do feel safe and ready to do so. I've spoken to a couple of observers already this sort of over the past couple of weeks about that. If you're not comfortable coming back to us, don't worry. Stay safe, stay well. We don't want to force anyone to come back, and no one's going to be penalised by saying, look, I don't feel safe, I don't feel comfortable. I'm self-isolating, or a family member self-isolating that I live with. We don't want to put anyone at risk. That's obviously absolutely understandable. We wouldn't expect anything else. We would much rather people stay safe and stay well in the current environment than observe on games of football. Football's always going to be here, so there's always that to come back to at a later date when you do feel safe, particularly with the changes that are coming forward at the moment as well. So I'm going to move on to the appointment process and touch upon that at the same time as well, and the slight changes to this. Last season we found obviously the appointments were coming out on sort of a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on when they were confirmed by the match official. We're going to try something slightly different at the start of this season, and obviously that'll be reflective of how we continue with that, depending on how successful it is. So me and Chris have been having conversations already about how we're going to work this, and we're going to try and give you, at the start of the month, we're going to advise you the dates that you'll be observing. With that, the referees are also going to be advised when they've got an observer as well. With this, we won't know, and we won't be able to advise you who you're refereeing or who you're observing and at what game it is. The reason why we're going to try it this way for the start of the season at least is we were finding last year there was a common theme of referees perhaps not closing dates early enough. So we're appointing them to games, we're appointing an observer, and then on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, or sometimes even later than that, they were coming off because they forgot to close their date. The thought process behind this is if they know at the start of October they're being observed on the third week of October, for instance, and you know you're observing on the third week of October, then you can make arrangements for that, whether that be closing your date in advance, or the referee is closing the date in advance, and we can rearrange and rejig and still give you a game on the third, but you won't have the details of that. So on your side, it won't make too much of a difference. But the referees are aware that, okay, I'm being observed, I might not be available. Let me try and rearrange things as best I can with that. So we'll work around that as best we can. We'll analyse that. We'll see how it goes. We'll ask for your feedback on that. But hopefully by giving officials that guidance there, by advising them well in advance, that they are prepared, and that when the data comes out and we give those appointments, they're set, they're confirmed, and we know we're ready to go without all the changes and messing people about. Because it's hard enough as it is, and you are all busy people. So we want to give you the facts when they are straight away without any changes. So they'll come out as a draft on the fourth week of the month. So they'll come out, for instance, for October on the fourth week of September, by which stage the referees have been advised that they're going to get that, and they'll give them a week to close that particular date if they know they're going to do so. And then we can rearrange around there as best we can. So the appointment will initially be released via our Pitchside Availability system, which a few of you are familiar with, some of you might not be. So our Pitchside referee system, I'll give you a demo at the end, is basically an online calendar, very similar to MOAS for those that have used MOAS, but allows us to control match officials' availability, release appointments through there, and allow match officials and observers to confirm the game on there as well. So it's an all-encompassing system that allows us to monitor and track everything as easily as possible, rather than emails getting lost and so on and so forth. So you'll be appointed through on there, and you'll get an email on there advising that you've been appointed to a game. You'll click on the link, enter your email and your password, and it'll take you through, and it'll show you who the home team is, the away team is, kick-off time, the date, the location, and the referee. So all of that detail will be there. For the early start of the season, the early stage of the season, while we adjust to that and move across to that, I'll follow that up with an email separately as well. And sort of after a month, 6-8 weeks, then we'll tail that off and use Pitchside solely. That limits, like I say, emails coming back and forth between yourselves, myself, Chris, the referees. Everything's in one place. Things don't get missed, and we can track that a lot easier than we potentially are at the moment. We're going to advise the referees to contact you by the Wednesday. So if you've not heard by the Wednesday, then please do let me know, and I can chase that with them. Again, because we're doing this in advance of that, they know that those details are there and they can confirm that as soon as possible. And there should be no reason why on a Wednesday they can't contact you to make those pre-arrangements with that. Again, we're trialing something new this year, and it's something that we've spoken about at length within the office. And because of how this season has gone, we felt that this is probably a good time to start it. Observations are only going to take place for level 6 to 5s and level 5 to 4s. Our level 7 to 6s, we reviewed the forms and the feedback last year in the observations. And whilst the development advice is good, a lot of the marks were very, very similar, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I think we found that by being able to do it, by doing that, we've stretched our resources a lot. And you'll see, again, why when we come on to sort of our workforce in a minute, why this decision's been taken. By focusing on 6 to 5s and 5 to 4s, there's less of a workforce to do, but we can give more tailored feedback. Our 7 to 6s, we can monitor and we can develop and we can work with them in a different way. The step from level 7 to 6 is very minimal, and the level of games they're going to be getting is going to be no change. So we can tailor that and work with them slightly differently, and that's going to be done on a numbers of games basis, laws of the game exam, as well as video content that they'll go on review and provide answers on to give us an understanding that they are understanding of law and understanding of decisions and how would they deal with that situation. And that will probably be completed via sort of a video conferencing session like this on a one-to-one basis as well. So it's a slightly different way of doing it. It might work, it might not. We'll analyse that throughout the season, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the season. And it might get to sort of December time, January time, we're looking at it and go, right, actually, okay, well, we might need to go back to do observations, in which case we'll revert back and we'll put some 7 to 6 observations in there. But the thought process is that steps 7 to 6 is a minimal difference. We can work with those referees in a separate group by themselves, and tailor that content and tailor that delivery and that development of them in a much finely tuned way, and focusing our workforce on our 6 to 5s and 5 to 4s, where the difference is far greater compared to the 7 to 6. I've just seen a couple of questions come in, Phil. I'll touch upon that at the end, if that's okay. So in terms of our promotion applicants, we've got 7 level 5 to 4s, which is a good number. We had 6 last year as well, of which they all got promoted. So we've got a very strong level 4 cohort this year of 16 officials, which would be great to add another 6 onto. So we've got Adam Everett, Alex Burney, Jack Cooper, Jamie Eames, Oliver Hollyoak, Pete Howard, and Romana Brea. So I've included their locations there just to give you an idea of where their appointments are likely to be in terms of geography. So we've got 3 full referees in the north of the county, and 3 fairly central. So the appointments are going to be for them further north, which is very different to sort of our footprint in previous years, where it's been very Cambridge centred, which is good. It means that the work that we're doing sort of in the north of the county is working, and that we can start to see that growth within that area. In difference to previous years where we've insisted on them completing the fitness test prior to any observations taking place, obviously with the current climate we're very limited with that. So the advice at the moment is that we don't complete those fitness tests until 2021. So we'll follow that, and it means that we will have to conduct some observations prior to those taking place. But again, they'll be monitored on a case-by-case basis. And if after the first one that the marks are looking like they need some extra development and extra work, then we might hold off on those until they're additional ones until they've completed a fitness test, so that our resources are more tailored to those that are more likely. With that, it might mean that we send some coaches along to those ones that have got lower marks after 1 or 2 games to help improve them and develop them further alongside the observer marks and reports that are coming in. In terms of our 6 to 5s, we've got 8 this year. So we've got a fairly small cohort this year in comparison to other years, but our biggest pool of referees have predominantly come from a 7 to 6 basis, which is where the difference has come. So our 6 to 5s this year are Andy Drain, Angelica Bacanu, Dominic Cameron, Lewis Fletcher, Mark Webb, Max Pawley, Ollie Begley and Stephen Cook. So a good spread there of those ones. Ollie Begley is down at university in Worcestershire, so he's being supported down there in their observations. He's down there at uni, so his observations will come from down there. So we've got 6, 7 in that bracket there to complete out of the 8. Good spread over the county though, so it should mean that there's a nice spread for observers and we can get a good variety of observers on those games as well. Gary, just seeing your question, I will touch upon that now because we're still on that point. Yeah, the 76 will get more mentoring involved with that and linked in with that as well. And we're going to set up a sort of a 76 development group with those officials as well that have advised they wish to be promoted to give them that additional benefit and support that they wouldn't be getting through the observations that they would be getting. So hopefully with that group, that should work, is our thought process, and the people that will be involved with that will be able to support their development as well. So if we can get the observations done early doors, and if we get all the observations done at a fairly quick rate and we don't have any interruptions with the season, there might be the opportunity to get some additional support in there with them as well. The idea is with the 76 is that once they've completed the set amount of games and the requirements for promotion, that we potentially push them into the 6 to 5 bracket as well, depending on how they performed within those areas that we worked on them with. So we might see that, I think at the moment we've got about 12 76s that have applied. We might find that 5 we feel are ready to go up to from 6 to 5 as well, in which case we'll work with them even more intensely and closely with the observation scheme as well to develop them further. So touching on with that, with our observer workforce, okay, we've got 14 registered observers for this season. So that's observers or individuals who have the observer tick and the training required for that. We are 3 observers down from last season, which is a shame, but there's good reasons for that. Stacey and Richards, who between them completed 10 observations last year, have moved over to Northamptonshire. So we wish them all the best in their continued development over in Northampton and their progression as level 4 referees. We've also lost Frank this season, which is a shame, but I completely understand where he's coming from. And he's one of these that at present doesn't feel safe enough to continue whilst we're in this current situation. He hopes that once things die down and we get back into a normal state, he is able to return. But Frank has been a big benefit to the county over the past couple of years and helped an enormous amount of referees develop. So we've passed on our sincere thanks, and I think both myself, Colin and Chris have all spoken to Frank and thanked him for the work that he's done as well. And he will be missed, but hopefully sort of at the back end of the season we hope to see him back again. He's not thrown in the towel completely. He is literally just taking a step back while we're monitoring the situation and what he's said to do. So he has offered to go out and mentor if we are desperate and observe if we are desperate. But whilst he's shielding and his wife's shielding as well, then we'll keep them safe for now and hopefully see them back around the county in the not too distant future. We've also had 1 observer promoted to the Supply League, so congratulations, Tim, on that, which is great to see. The reports that have come in from Tim have been really, really good, really well written, have been really useful for the referees as well. So we were more than delighted to be able to nominate him towards the Supply League, and even more so that he was able to be taken on by the list, and the Eastern Counties took him on. I believe he's also already done 1 or 2 already. I've also seen obviously Gary Balls as well has moved over from the United Counties League onto the Eastern Counties League as well. So we've gained 2 additional Supply League observers onto our list as well, which is fantastic to use. Out of last season, we completed 81 observations in total out of the 14 that we used. Out of those 81 observations, 4 observers completed a total of 59, which is an incredible number of games, and this is prevalent really based on sort of the reason why we changed the 7 to 6 when you see who completed those. So Frank and Tim both completed 8 observations each, so between them they completed nearly half of the observations. Obviously with Frank stepping back for the time being and Tim also operating at Supply League level, understandably they're going to be producing slightly less county league and county level observations. Cliff Maskell completed 13. Cliff this year, because of what has taken on as well, Cliff has taken a step back from the Eastern Counties so will hopefully be more readily available on a county level. So he's effectively swapped places with Tim for the time being. And Drew completed 10 as well. So sort of between those four observers, they completed a great deal of numbers. So hopefully that we'll be able to cover a similar number of games that we did last year, but obviously with less numbers needed to be done, we're not going to have to stretch the workforce quite as much as we might have needed to otherwise. So this season we've got 62 observations to complete of just level 5s and level 6s as well. So still a strong number of observations to complete between that pool of 14 observations. We've got one referee who's predominantly going to be needing to be observed on a Sunday. The reason for that is he's wanting to do more lines on a Saturday, which is Andy Drain, sort of to help with clubs and funding and stuff like that as well on Eastern Counties, because he can go out with his son Jack due to the joint travel arrangement that those two can have because they live together. So very, very noble of Andy to take that hit on that one on Saturdays and run the line and go and help out on the Eastern Counties and the Kershaw Prem solely as an assistant referee. But he's still interested in going through the promotion scheme, and he's still going to be refereeing heavily on Sunday morning league as well as the women's league on a Sunday afternoon. So we're going to have to work with him to get his 3 observations in over that season. We've also got 2 female referees that also require observations on the women's pathway. They'll require 2 observations on that pathway as well. So we've got 5 observations that we do need to complete on a Sunday. So any availability that you can offer on a Sunday would be useful. If we can tick one each of those observations off once a month, that would take us through to the end of the season. Obviously, ideally, we'd like to get those Sunday ones done as soon as possible in case we have any hiccups along the way with the season. But that just gives you a rough outline of how we're looking and how we're working with our match officials for the year, and sort of the requirements of what we need as a county in order to complete that promotion scheme for the coming season. Phil, I'll touch upon your question now. In terms of the face coverings, they've obviously told you to wear them on arrival. Sorry, I probably wasn't clear on that. Yeah, arrival only, and then as long as you're socially distant and meeting those social distance requirements, that 2 meters, then please feel free to take them off. You don't have to. If you feel more comfortable wearing one, then please do. That's not a problem at all. It's your own choice with that. Again, at the end of the game, as you're exiting the facility, please do replace your face mask and please do put it on again, or you're leaving the ground in case there's any more individuals around you, again, just to protect yourself and themselves as well. Just going to quickly look at the forms for 6 to 5 as well, and I'm just going to pick out some key points really, so that as observers you've got a rough set of guidelines to follow for the new season, so that we're all working off a similar pathway. With the 6 to 5 form, there's 4 key criteria to look at. So you've got application of law and decision making, match control, positioning, movement and fitness, and alertness and awareness linked into empathy for the game. So within those sections, all we're asking for is a couple of bullet points of detailed content to link in with those. 2 lines per bullet point would suffice, maybe linking into 2 or 3 points within there, depending whether it's a strength or a development. The more criteria included, obviously, the bigger it gets for the referee. The idea is to keep it as clear and concise as possible so that they've got clear guidance to take away from the game. The report's really there to back up your debrief, and the main amount of feedback should come within your debrief verbally, and the observation there at 6 to 5 is there to literally just highlight those key points without too much detail in there as well. In terms of the overall mark, we had a couple last year where we had to make some slight amendments based on what people had ticked throughout the observation compared to the final mark they had provided. In terms of what we're looking for, if you're going to be awarding an above standard mark, we're looking for a minimum of 2 above standards with 2 standard expecteds. Obviously, they have the ability to reach that 4 above standards if they do have that exceptional performance. But as a minimum, we're looking for that 2 above standards with 2 standard expecteds. For that standard expected, we're looking for at least 1 above standards and 3 standard expecteds, or 1 below, 2 standards and 1 above. So where it averages out as that standard expected. Try and think of it as a marking scheme of 1, 2, 3. If you're giving a total of, it's out of really 9 marks. If you're giving anything around a 4.5, a 4 to a 5, then we're looking for that standard expected is possibly the best way to look at it. If we're looking at a below standard, it's that 2 below standard and 2 standard expected as a minimum. If they've got 3 standard expected, then we'd expect that to be within that middle range. If worst case scenario, there's more below standards that are required, then don't be afraid to put that in for the development of the referee. Okay. So just to link into an example, I'm just going to drag one across from one of my other screens now, from one we had last year. I've taken the observer's name out and the referee's name as well. Hopefully you can see that. It's been shaded onto the screen. So you can see here that depending on the number of comments that have been given sort of determines that mark. So the application of law, we had two basic bullet points that touched upon some standard level of application decision making. There was little development available there. Because there was only 2 strengths, we would expect that to be within that standard expected range. We're probably really looking for 4 or 5 short bullet points or 2 or 3 detailed bullet points for anything above that standard expected. The below standard here, okay, they've gone 3 and 3, but the 3 key development points are in much greater detail there than the main strengths. It's good that there's a good balance on that one between those strengths and those development points. The referee is not too disheartened on that, but you can see how there's much more detail within those key development points for that. With these reports, I will circulate them as well, so you can have a quick read through them afterwards, just to give those any details as well. So position and fitness and work rate, you can see there's 2 fairly well written areas there that have linked into some timed examples, which also involved a key match decision based on their positioning, movements and fitness. So with that one, because there's a timed example and it had a key match instance involved within it, those 2 areas there can link in nicely to that above standard, because of the severity of how that movement and that positional sense aided their credibility within that decision and aided their support. Again, with this final one, the alertness and awareness and empathy for the game, we've only got 2 bullet points in each section, but the below standard ones, or the key development points, are in much greater detail to give that clearer instruction. Overall there, you can see we've got 1 standard, 2 below and 1 above. This was very tight between that below and that standard expected, to be fair on this one, but because there was 2 below, that outweighed it for us really, and had that below standard overall on that one. The challenge game in there, we discussed that with the observer on that one, and we decided that because it was a challenging game, we felt that the challenges were caused by some areas that the referee hadn't dealt with during the game, which led to that below standards mark and that becoming challenging for them. So that didn't play too much of a part on that. So you can see really how it's got those key details in, it's got those key bullet points, and it's extended the development points and given some key development areas within that. I'm just going to hide that again now. Again, like I say, I'll share that out to you afterwards. So with our 5 to 4 form, we've got 7 areas to look at, so there's much more detail for us to look at. So the application of law, match control, fitness, work rate and positioning, stoppages and technical offences, game understanding, teamwork and communication. So 7 separate areas there to look at, which works quite well with that 5 to 4 form, as it sets them up nicely for 4. This one's slightly different in terms of the marking scheme. It's marked by numbers rather than below, above or standard. So if the referee provides no opportunity to demonstrate that criteria, for instance, there's no misconduct, so you can't mark them adequately on that misconduct section, then we'll record that as a 3. On any other section where there is a 3, there's no comments required for that, because occasionally that normally means there's no development, there's no positives with it, or nothing's happened. So we can just mark that 3, allows us then to focus our comments, and the referee's focus then falls on the areas they did well and the areas they need to improve, rather than giving us comments on an area where there wasn't a lot happening and there wasn't enough of a reason there for us to go up or down either way. If we do award a score of 1 or 2, so our lower end marks, we need to provide some timed examples of the situation that occurred, as well as a solution for that. Okay, so what could they do differently to increase that and improve that level of their game. On the other hand, if we go for a 4 or a 5, all we need to do is provide that timed evidence and just advise what they did well. So, for instance, if it's spotting a serious foul play tackle in the 63rd minute, you would effectively just put that and say that they handled the situation well. We'll touch upon a bit more in terms of the guidance in a minute as well. Comments really on this should be limited to around 400 characters, which links into 3.5 lines. Again, you might be thinking why, but if we think back to also with the 6-5 form, the guidance that we're giving on paper should just be a top up of the knowledge that we give them and the support we give them via our verbal feedback. So we're just giving them those key areas there. That way, then it allows them to focus their attention on those and not get drifted into too much detail. Allows us to be much more concise in what we're saying and what we're putting across to them. And with the 5-4 form, the promotion criteria is a minimum mark of 70, which has dropped from 73 from 2 years ago. So slightly lower mark, but what's required to get to that is much, much more than it has been in previous seasons. And I put here, use the descriptor when writing a report. I'm just going to open that up and show you that as well. So you've got that. We circulated this last season. I'll circulate it again tomorrow or tonight for you as well, along with the presentation. But it basically gives us an overview of what we need to be looking for, what we need to be writing about, and what we need to be sort of discussing with them. So each area here gives us what we're looking for. So within application of law, these are the 3 areas that we're looking at, and they're described on the form as well. And this is how we're marking. So they correctly recognised and penalised all Law 12 offences, and players never appeared confused nor challenged the referee's interpretation. So when you're writing the report, if you're awarding that for, pretty much use those wordings there. So during the game, you recognised all and penalised all level Law 12 offences. Players didn't really appear confused nor challenged your interpretation of that. Examples are shown in the 6th, 12th, 18th, 24th and 93rd minute, for instance. So effectively use the writing that's in that descriptor to help make the reports easy for you to write, because again, this is literally just giving them that brief overview of what you've discussed already, but also allows us to compare the observations to the criteria, makes it easy for them to understand where those marks are coming from and how they can go through that. So just to go through an example of this one as well, I've just closed it. Apologies, I've just accidentally closed it rather than opening it. So in this example, again, I've removed the referees' names and the teams and the observer. It's a little more lengthy than we would like, but the detail in there and the idea behind it is important. So you can see how with the 3s there's no comments, but the 4s have got a nice clear description with a nice timed example to help the referee understand the areas that they did well. And that's consistent all the way through. So there's a nice consistent pattern of 4s and 3s all the way through on this. Just trying to see if there's no 2s on this, but you can see the referee on this occasion came out with a mark of 72 despite all those 4s and 3s. The occasional one, we might need some more timed examples, such as these 2 sections here, but the rest of them have got nice, good timed examples and give a good description within a concise environment to give that understanding to the referee. That pretty much concludes everything that I was going to discuss. I'm just going to sort of touch some action points here for us as well before we sort of get going for the season. Review both of the forms, the blank forms as well, and what I'll do is I'll also circulate those 2 examples there for you as well to review, so you've got a template to work from and an idea of how you want to follow it as well. Review the 5-to form guidance document that I've just shown on screen so you have an understanding of that. Don't be afraid to take that to games with you. Don't be afraid, so that you literally can take that box and you can put the times examples around the text. You've got the guidance there, you've got the word in there. Put the timed examples in on either section where they've done well, where they haven't done well, and it makes it a lot easier for you to write as well. For those of you that those of you that require this should have had an email from me already, but I will follow up with an email next week. As part of an observer, you do need to keep your DBS and your safeguarding qualification up to date, particularly ahead of the new season for next year as well, where that will become mandatory to register. So you'll be unable to register if you don't have an in-date safeguarding certification. This safeguarding for all has been released at the moment as an interim measure where we can't run or are limited on what we can run with the face-to-face sessions. So all referees and observers can complete this. It's a 2-year certification. It's not a qualification. It's a 2-year one. But by the time that expires, there will be a new Safeguarding Children workshop launch, which we understand will be an online method. So I will follow that up with an email for those that need it. It's about an hour and a half long to complete, so not as lengthy as the face-to-face sessions that you would have needed to attend as of sort of 10 months ago, 12 months ago. So please complete that as soon as possible. Otherwise, you will continue to get emails from me chasing you for it. There is a slight issue with the system, as there always is with FAIT, and these aren't at the moment showing on fans. So please send me an email when you've completed it. The system also isn't generating the certificates for them either at the moment. So once you've completed, send me an email. I can tick it off on my side, and then once we have an update from FA Education, we can get that checked on your file, and if there's any problems, we can come back to you on that as well. Please let me know on availability over the coming weeks. It's really useful for us that we can plan ahead, particularly if we're going down this line of letting you know sort of 3-4 weeks in advance when you've got a game. We've got Tim out tomorrow. Tim's the only one, but as of early next week, I'll be looking at the following week's appointments as well as drafting those ones in for the whole of October. So please do send me an email and let me know as soon as possible, or even better yet, use Pitchside. If you know your Pitchside access and you've got your Pitchside access, please do go on there and let me know as well. If you haven't got access, then I will get that sorted out next week and get an email sent out to you so you can reset your password. But ultimately, I think this is the most important thing for us all here this weekend and this coming season. Keep yourself safe. Keep those around you safe. If at any stage you feel like things have taken a step beyond where you feel safe going out and observing, just pick up the phone and please do let me know. But ultimately, enjoy the season. Keep talking to us, keep us updated with how you feel and how you're getting on, and we'll continue to provide guidance and support throughout the season as well. In terms of questions, Phil, no, we don't have access to MOAS, unfortunately. We don't get to see those dates. It might be easier for yourself if you let me know when you are free, and I'll assume you're closed unless you let me know otherwise, in case you get one from Ralph or higher above that with Chris as well. So if you let me know when you're free, that's probably easier to work on. Gary, your Safeguarding Children workshop is registered on your whole game. The Safeguarding for All won't show on there at present. So if your Safeguarding Children workshop is expired, it will show as red. If it's expiring in the next 6 months, it will show as amber. If it's longer than that, then it shows as green. But I'll send a follow-up email out early next week. I'm off on Monday and Tuesday, but I'll get that email circulated to Wednesday or Thursday as well. Has anyone got any further questions? If you think of one, post this, drop me a text, drop me an email. I'll keep an eye on my phone tonight and over the weekend, and I'll get a response to you as soon as possible. If there's nothing else, thank you all for your time. I told you we'd be about 45 minutes, and we have pretty much hit that nail on the head. Thank you for your time. I'll get this recording completed and uploaded onto our YouTube channel as an unlisted viewing, and send you the link as well as the relevant documents that we've discussed tonight as well. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay well, and we will talk to you in the near future. Thank you. Perfect.